All right, so for this game, we have a bit of, I guess, a different kind of game in a sense. So largely this is a sequencing game because we have a bunch of elements that we have to put into a sequence, but not all the elements are going to be used, so some are going to be out. Now, normally what we would do is we would primarily set this up as a sequencing setup with an out. The thing is, though, in this game, we don't actually know how many are going to be selected, so it's kind of hard to put down the columns for the sequence. So instead, we're going to primarily run this as an in and out game. So basically with an in and an out. It's just that within the in and out, we're just going to, well, at least just on the inside, we're going to keep in mind the sequential progression. So the idea that we're going to run from left to right within the outside, sorry, the inside rather. And on the outside, obviously, the sequence doesn't matter just because those guys are just not selected at all. Now, the elements themselves happen to be G, K, we have, G, J, and K. And then we have O, P, T, Y. So we have our 7 elements to work with, and I guess from there, let's take a look. So the first rule says, if we have a J, then it has to go either first or last. So I guess we can do that as a condition. If there's a J, then we'll have to have J either 1 or last. And note that we specifically can say it's last because we don't know that it's going to be the 7th position because there might not be 7, but it's going to be the last one there. Next. If J is an ingredient, then Y must not be. So essentially, J gets rid of Y, Y gets rid of J. And this is effectively an exclusive relationship. This just means that one of Y or J is going to have to be out. Now notice that they could potentially maybe both be out. We don't have to have one of them in, because if they were both out, nothing really happens. There's no trigger there. It's just that they cannot both be in. So at least one of them has to be out. Next, either P is an ingredient or Y is an ingredient, but not both. So this is a similar rule, but now this cuts on both sides. Basically, between P and Y, we're going to have one in, and likewise, we're going to have one out. So we can reserve a space for P or Y, and what we'll do is we'll place this placeholder kind of in the middle here, because we don't know where exactly that P or Y is going to go in the sequence. So we'll just put it in the middle just to start. And then one of P or Y will also have to be out. Now, we don't know if on the outside that's going to be a separate space, since it could just be the Y who happens to be out. So we'll just leave kind of a reminder above the chart over here that one of P or Y still has to be out. Next, G, K, O, and T must be ingredients. So G, K, O, T are all in. So that's good to know. So that means, wait a minute, that because we're going to have for sure these 4 and one of P or Y. So that means that there's going to be at least 5 of 7 elements on the inside. In fact, actually, wait, let's kind of talk about that. So we have to have we'll have to have at least 5 because we'll have to have these 4 plus the 1. Now, can we do more than that? We know that there's at least one person on the outside at all times, which means we definitely can't have everybody in, but could we do 6 people on the inside? Well, arguably, I mean, we know that if Y is the one who is in, then the Y is going to kick out both J and P. So that's worth recognizing. If Y is in, if Y is the one of the 2 who's going to be in, then we're going to be locked into only 5 spaces because that would kick out both J and P, and then the other 4 are just going to be in. But if this is a P on the other hand, arguably you could have both P and J on the inside, and since they could both be in, nothing seems to stop that, at least for now, then we could have as many as 6, and then Y is going to be the one who happens to be out. Of course, we could have Y and J both out, in which case P could be the only one of the 3 who is in. We don't have to have 6 if P is in, but if P is the one who is in, we could potentially maybe have as many as 6. Not so much, though, with the Y. Anyways, the last rule told us that O has to go before G, and G has to go before both K and T. So actually, that's pretty good. We have a nice elastic band setup here. So we're going to have to basically have O, G, and then we're going to have K and T to follow the G. So that's pretty good. Now, we know that if this is the P or the Y who goes in, to be fair, it could really shuffle among all of these guys. We don't really know where they're going to go. If it's a J, for the record, who is in and it kicks out the Y, the J would have to go either first or last, but I guess that's still flexible. He could go either before all of these guys or after all of these guys. So I guess we don't know much more here. We could try to exhaust this based on the P, Y, and J situation, but it doesn't seem like it'd be worthwhile. Let's take a look at the questions themselves. So question number 6, which of the following could be the order of the vegetables added to the pot, first to last? Well, as usual, we go by the rules. The first rule is that if we have a J, then it has to be first or last. So going through the rules, answer choices rather, answer choice A and B don't have a J, so they're fine. C has it in 1, that's okay. D has it last, that's fine. E, however, has J not in the last or the first position, so that gets rid of E. Next, J gets rid of Y, so if we have a J, then there's no Y. So going through the answer choices, it's worth noting answer choice D has both J and Y, so we can get rid of that one. Next, P or Y, but not both, have to be selected. So going through, answer choice A has neither P nor Y, so A is out. B and C have a P and a P, but no Y, so that's okay. And lastly, I guess we can combine the last two rules. G, K, O, T have to go in the order of O, G, and then K/T. So looking at the answers, answer choice B would seem to violate that since we have G before O. And that leaves us with answer choice C to be the only viable one. I guess as usual, we'll just plug that into the chart. So we have J-O-G, P-T-K. J-O-G, P-T-K. And it's worth noting, this is actually, we kind of talked about this, but this is an example of 6 elements being in as long as P is the one of the 2 who is in, which means that on the outside, we're now going to have a Y. Next, so we have, that was answer choice C for number 6. From there, question number 7 is global. We'll come back to that one in a second. Let's take a look at question number 8. So if Y is first, well, let's play this out. So if we have Y in the earlier position, so it's in the first position, what does that tell us? Well, Y we know automatically kicks out both P and J, right? Because Y and J can't both be in, and then P and Y can't both be in. So that's pretty good because now the only people remaining are these guys over here, O, G, K, T. So what's going to happen is we're going to have them in that relative order. The only variability here is that K and T can still go in either position for the last and second last. So the question itself now asks what must be true. G is in 2, that is not true. J is in 5, J is actually out at the moment. K is in 4. Now K and T can flip back and forth, but K doesn't have to go forth, so that disqualifies C. O is in 2nd, that definitely has to be true, so that's viable just in case. T is in 5, and that could happen again, but it doesn't have to. So the best answer to question number 8 is D. Next, question number 9. So 9's global, we'll come back to that one in a second. Let's take a look at 10. So if Y happens to be 5th, well, once again, let's play it out. If we have a Y in the 5th position, I guess the question becomes, what does that tell us? Now, I guess if Y is in the 5th position, automatically there would have to be 4 people before it by definition, but Y, as we said, kicks out both P and J automatically, which again, it really kind of leaves us with the exact same situation as we had just a moment ago, except the O, G, K/T are going to go before the Y rather than after. So we're just going to have them O, G, K/T. The question here is which of the following could be true? Answer choice A, G is in 3 and it cannot because G is currently in 2. Answer choice B, J is in 1. Now J is currently out, so that wouldn't work. Next, K is in 3. And the question is asking for what could be true, so that actually could be true because K and T can basically shuffle back and forth between 3 and 4, so C is viable. Just in case, let's take a look at the others. K6, for the record, there is no 6 right now, there's only 5, so that's certainly out. And O2, no, O is currently first. So the best answer to question number 10 then is answer choice C. Next, question number 11. I guess the rest of these are global and number 12 is a modifier, so we'll come back to that one later. Let's go back to the global questions. Number 7, which of the following could be true? A, G is first. Well, no, G is certainly after the O, so that's not going to occur. Answer choice B, G is 5th. Could we have G go into the 5th position? For G to go fifth, K and T would, well, no, that wouldn't work because K and T would have to go after it, and that would place them in positions 6 and 7. But we know that we can't have 7 elements on the board because we know that one person, at least one of Y or J, has to be out. So B would not work. Next, could we have J in 5? Well, the only way J could go fifth is for J to go last. And, well, no, that wouldn't work because if J is fifth and J is last, that means that there will only be 5 players, and the other 4 are going to be O, G, K, T, but we still need room for one of P or Y, which means that's definitely not going to work. We can't, I mean, J can be last, but it can't be last in fifth, because then that would mean that the only other players are, once again, these 4, and we would have no room for one of P or Y to be in. So answer choice C also wouldn't work. Next, potatoes first. Can we have P in 1? And that actually seems pretty safe, doesn't it? Arguably, we could have the P before all of these people, and otherwise, Y would get kicked out, and J could be in or out still. You could arguably have J out as well, or you could have J in and it would just go last after everybody. So either way, that looks like D would be viable. Let's hold on to this. And E, T is second. Well, no, we know that T has to go after O and G, so that's certainly not going to work. So best answer to number 7 becomes answer choice D. Next, question number 9. So number 9 says, any of the following could be in the 4th position except. So what cannot go 4th? Well, we can use our history here to a certain degree because we know that in the 4th position historically, we've seen the potential for P, and then here we could have had K or T, and here it could have been K or T. So P, K, and T can be disqualified. So that gets rid of answer choices, looks like C and D. Now between answer choices A, B, and E, I guess the question is who would have a hard time going 4th? I guess let's talk about, I mean, O has a whole bunch of people after him, so you might have a hard time with that. Let's start with that guy. So if we have the O in the 4th position, actually, yeah, this is something similar to what we did earlier. If O is 4th, then G, K, T are going to have to go into 5, 6, and 7, which means we would have to have 7 players on the board, and we can't do that, right? Because we can't have 7 players on the board at one time. At least one person, we said, always has to be out. So the best answer for number 9 is B. You could not have O in the 4th position. Next, number 11. Any of the following could be 6th except. So who cannot go into the 6th position? Well, historically, once again, we've seen K and T basically. Well, no, this is only 5. Yeah, but in this scenario, I guess this was a K. And technically, we could have flipped this. This could have been a T just as well, right? Because T and K are basically logically identical here. So in this scenario, you could have easily had either K or T go into the 6th position. So that would have disqualified answer choices B and D. In fact, it's actually worth noting, in this entire game, K and T are logically identical elements. The only rules that apply to them is that they each have to be after the G, and they both happen to be in, which means if they're both really just identical elements, it's impossible for one of them to be the answer without the other one because they're the exact same element. Anytime you come across a situation in which 2 elements are logically identical to each other, they can't both be right. So if they're both answer choices, then they both effectively must be wrong. But that still leaves open the question of who wouldn't be able to go 6th. So we have who remaining? We have J, P, and Y. Now J, it's worth noting, if J is in, it would have to go last, right? So arguably, couldn't we do that? Because with a J, you could have 6 people. In fact, in this scenario, if the J just flipped onto the other side, we seemingly could have it go last. In fact, actually, that's probably the key to the answer here, which is 6 people. We said early on, we can't actually have 6 people if Y is in, because you'll notice, for example, in these scenarios when Y was in play, Y always kicks out both P and J, right? Because Y can't be with J, Y can't be with P, which means if Y is in, that would always drop you down to only 5 players, which means Y could never be 6th, because if you have a Y, then you're never going to have 6 in the first place. So answer choice E becomes correct. Y could never be in the 6th position. Next, Number 12, which of the following, if substituted for the condition that if J is an ingredient, then Y must not be an ingredient? So basically, we're trying to replace this rule right here, that J kicks out Y. And just to kind of recap, all this really meant is that one of those two would have to be on the outside. This is kind of the implication of that rule. They could always have been both out, but at least one of them has to be. Let's take a look. Answer choice A. P is an ingredient only if J is an ingredient. Now, just to kind of recap, remember, a good answer choice for a replacement question is you're looking for something that always had to be true and something that guarantees that this rule would be maintained. Those are your two parameters. So for this answer choice, P is an ingredient only if you have J. This is basically a conditional statement, which basically looks like this. If you have a P, then you must have a J. Now, is that true? Did that have to be true that if you have a P, then you must have a J? And for the record, it didn't, because originally, if P was in, all it really did is kick out the Y. But if Y was out, it didn't actually drag the J in. They could have both been out. So in other words, this answer choice never had to be true. P never required J. So answer choice A then gets disqualified. Next, answer choice B. J is an ingredient only if you had P. Well, again, that's a conditional statement that looks something like this. If you have a J, then you must have a P. Let's get rid of that one. So is that true that if you have a J originally, was it true that if you had a J, then you would have had to have a P? Well, originally, if you had a J, it would have kicked out the Y, but wait a minute, yes, because if you kicked out Y, it did drag in P, because one of those two always had to be in. So answer choice B, it does meet that parameter. It meets the parameter of this always had to be true. Anytime you had a J, you would have had to have a P alongside it. But then there's the other question, which is, if this were true, if we maintain this rule, would that guarantee that one of J or Y would always be out? Well, let's take a look. If we maintain this rule, then it means that if you have a J, then you would have a P. But wait, according to this rule, P would have then kicked out the Y, which means if we add this rule to replace that other one about J and Y, that actually would have the same impact, because this would mean that anytime you have a J, you would bring in a P, which in turn would kick out Y, which means it gets us to the same result. If you had a J, it would have kicked out the Y. So answer choice B is a viable answer choice here. We're going to hold on to this one. Just in case, let's take a look at the rest of these. Answer choice C. If J is not an ingredient, then Y must have been. Now, it's worth noting that never had to be true. If J was out, we never had to have a Y. In fact, we could have always had both J and Y be out. So because C never had to be true, this is already disqualified. Answer choice D. If exactly 5 vegetables are ingredients, then J must be out. So I guess that's one question. The one question is, did this ever have to be true, that if we had 5 ingredients in, then J would have gotten kicked out? And it actually looks like that did have to be true, because originally, O, G, K, T are 4 ingredients, and a 5th ingredient always had to be P or Y, which means that if we only had 5, then we would have had to have these 4, and this would have been your 5th, and so J would have been out. So answer choice D is something that always had to be true. It does pass that test in a sense. But then there's the other question, which is, would this get the job done? Would this guarantee that anytime you have a J, then you will not have a Y? Well, no, not quite, because all this rule is telling you is what would happen if you happen to have 5 ingredients. But if you had 6 ingredients, this rule tells you nothing, which means in a situation in which you had 6 ingredients, answer choice D would still fully allow for you to have both J and Y on the inside, and then P, between P and Y, would have gotten kicked out, which means answer choice D, even though it always had to be true, it doesn't get the job done. It doesn't guarantee that J would actually kick out Y. It would fully allow for them both to be in as long as there are 6 ingredients. Next, answer choice E. If exactly 6 vegetables are ingredients, then J must be one of them. So again, did that have to be true that if we had to have 6, then J would have had to be in? And actually, yes. Again, that's also true, because if we had 6 ingredients, y could never be between p and j, between p and y could never be one of the ingredients, because if you ever had a y, we said it would kick out both p and j. This happened every single time, which means if you happen to have 6 ingredients, then p would have had to be the one who is in, y would have been out, and then the last ingredient would have been j. So answer choice E happens to be true. If you had 6 ingredients, j would have been one of them. So that meets the did it have to be true parameter. But then there's the other half of it, which is, does this rule really guarantee that j and y will never both be in? In other words, does it guarantee that one will kick out the other? And you'll notice that it really doesn't. I mean, by telling us that if you have 6 ingredients, then j has to be one of them, that still allows you to have j and the 6th ingredient could be y. In other words, this rule would not deny the possibility that you could have had j and y both in with 6 ingredients. So answer choice E isn't good enough. It doesn't get the job done. So the best answer to question number 12 is B.